Hi, this is Dr. Joannides, Chief Medical Director at Optimum Re, and this is the Optimum Academy, a new alcohol marker 101, video number 3, an insider's look at the PEth test. So let's get started. In our prior videos, we talked about in the red cell membrane, and we're using our Typhoon Lagoon inner tube as if it's a red blood cell. In the membrane, there's a substance called phosphatidylcholine. When you drink ethanol, however, the ethanol attaches to where the choline part of that molecule was and forms phosphatidylethanol, or PEth. And it's useful as an indicator of a person's ethanol intake over the last month. So it could be quite helpful to us as we underwrite life insurance applicants. So if you order a PEth test from the lab, you may get two different levels. And the PEth has these funny numbers after it. So the first number is 16:0/18:1, and that's capital POPE. And the second one is same numbers except the last number is :2, and that's PLPE. And both of those should be less than 20 nanograms per milliliter if the person is abstinent from alcohol. So we'll talk more about PEth levels. So those are the two PEth levels that you might see reported if somebody orders a PEth test. So the first one accounts for about 37 to 46% of PEth, and the second one accounts for 26 to 28% of PEth. Stable for about 28 days. Women have higher levels of PEth after drinking equal amounts of alcohol as men, since they have fewer red blood cells in their body. They have approximately 25 trillion red blood cells, whereas men have approximately 30 trillion. And a CDT test, if that happened to be ordered, it could be negative, but still have a positive PEth test. So PEth is a very durable test that we could use. And here's kind of a spectrum of values. Less than 20 on the PEth test result, nanograms per milliliter is compatible with abstinence, and levels above 200-ish are compatible with chronic and excessive alcohol consumption, and the level can go up into the thousands. In between 20 and 200 is kind of the, quote, social drinking area. So what are the uses for this PEth test? So it's a blood test that would be drawn, and it could help us assess ethanol risk in life underwriting. It could help with life insurance claims. It could help assess for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder to see if a fetus has been exposed to alcohol when the mother was pregnant. It could be used in clinical applications like people that are being considered for a liver transplant. Could be used in all kinds of forensic applications, workplace testing, and then driver's license regranting if somebody had DUIs in the past. So as we know, people tend to underreport their alcohol use, and this is an article called "You Can't Handle the Truth," and it compared phosphatidylethanol levels that were in chronic liver disease patients, and even chronic liver disease patients that were not supposed to be drinking underreported their alcohol use by a significant degree, more than half. So people tend to underreport alcohol use even when they have critical liver diseases. Alcohol during pregnancy is certainly an adverse finding and can lead to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder in the fetus. And even levels higher than 8 could be considered using alcohol during pregnancy, which is a real no-no. If somebody has a phlebotomy for some other medical impairment, that really doesn't affect the PEth levels. So that shouldn't be necessarily taken into consideration when you're considering what the PEth level is on a particular applicant. And we don't have a poppy seed bagel defense like we do for opioids. There is some alcohol or ethanol in a ProAir HFA inhaler for asthma or some kind of lung disease, but it's a very small amount and not enough to cause a measurable amount of blood alcohol. People that are taking trazodone, which may increase levels of amphetamine or MDMA on a test, That doesn't affect PEth levels, so there's no worry about that particular medication. And although the Mayo Clinic advises not to use an alcohol wipe when you draw the blood for a PEth test, other people say that only ingested alcohol is being reported on the PEth levels, not the alcohol from a wipe when the blood is drawn. Now, if people have some kind of hemolytic anemia, that can lower the PEth level because the red blood cells don't last long enough or have a shortened lifespan. So that may reduce the PEth level. So that could falsely lower a PEth level in somebody. So consider that if somebody's being tested for PEth, if they also have a hemolytic process. And we know from past experience that hemolytic anemias also affect A1C levels because we usually consider a red blood cell to have a 120-day lifespan. But and that's why A1C levels are so useful because it gives us a reflection of what the glucose level has been in the body over the last 120 days, usually 2 to 3 months in terms of A1C levels. But in hemolytic anemia, the A1C levels may be reduced due to the blood cells not living as long as 120 days. So if you ever see a super low A1C level reported, like in the 3s, it may be because the person has some kind of hemolytic process and the red blood cells are not lasting a full 120 days. So just another mention of some other things related to alcohol. Some people try to beat a breathalyzer test to avoid a DUI, and they use a hydrogen peroxide mouthwash, which they carry around in their car, I guess. Hydrogen peroxide will decrease the alcohol level, and police are aware of these kind of things, so I'd be very cautious about using anything to try to beat a breathalyzer test. Better just not to drink before you drive. Alcohol and cancer risk, a new report was put out in early January of 2025 concerning the risk of cancer in those people who drink alcohol. And there's lots of stats in this report, which you can review at your leisure. But basically, we may actually start having cancer warnings on alcoholic beverages to alert us to the fact that alcohol may contribute to cancer-related risk. Now these guys, who you may recognize, sold their tequila company for $700 million plus, and they produced a super premium tequila from 100% blue agave. It was called Casamigos tequila. And one interesting fact about tequila is that Mexican law, tequila must contain some methanol. And methanol has no nutritional value, but is actually a toxin. But for some reason, Mexican law mandates that tequilas must contain some methanol, hopefully in small enough quantities so they don't contribute to any negative features in people that drink tequilas. However, just to be aware when we talk about ethanol, that when people drink what they think might be alcohol when traveling to far-off lands, it may contain some methanol in it, or people that drink home-brewed alcohol or counterfeit drinks may have methanol in their alcoholic beverage. Moonshine made by novices that don't understand how the still works could be contaminated with methanol. And so thing to remember is that methanol boils at lower temperature in the stills. So you're supposed to discard the first batch of distilled spirits to get rid of the methanol part of the distillation process. And even in today's bourbon distillation for manufacturers of bourbon, what they do is they discard the first portion of the distillate, which is called the head, because that has the higher concentrations of methanol. And then they retain the heart of the distillate, which only contains trace amounts of methanol. But virtually every alcoholic beverage has some methanol contained in it. So one thing I would suggest is we ask the labs, both exam 1 and CRL, to make this PEth test available to us, because we could certainly use it in underwriting and claims. And with increased volume of testing, the cost will decrease and it'll become more readily available. I know on a regular basis I have large cases where it would be very useful to have a PEth test because the history of drinking alcohol or their past adverse problems with alcohol is a little hazy, and it's hard to ascertain what their intake of alcohol is now. So I know for cases I see, a PEth level would be super helpful in helping me decide what is the ethanol risk in this particular case. So I have some cases. So let's say we have a 52-year-old woman as a Delta airline pilot applying for a $2 million policy. There's no alcohol criticisms in the APS. She has no major medical issues, and her build and labs are all within normal limits, except for some reason this direct life company orders CDT tests and it comes back positive. But if we had a PEth test and it returned less than 20 nanograms per milliliter, we know that indicates this person is not drinking alcohol. And whatever caused that CDT test to be positive, it really doesn't mean this person is drinking excessive amounts of alcohol, because we have a really durable test, PEth, that tells us that this person is not drinking ethanol. So it would be very helpful here. And we'd feel more safe flying on Delta Airlines if this woman was the pilot. Case number 2, we have the same age person, but a male who's a Southwest airline pilot, and he's applying for $2 million. There's no alcohol criticisms, no major medical issues. His build is good. His labs indicate an elevated MCV of 98, a GGT elevated of 87, and an HDL elevated at 100. His CDT test returned negative, though. So if we stopped underwriting with those ingredients, we would probably say, well, whatever is causing the MCV and the GGT and the HDL, he's not drinking enough alcohol that we're concerned because the CDT is negative. However, if you had a PEth test and it returned 350, that's above that 200-ish level. So this person is drinking a significant amount of alcohol. So that would be a concern. So here again, the PEth test would really give us an advantage to assess what is the ethanol risk in this case. Let's say we have case number 3, a 60-year-old woman is a winemaker in Napa Valley. She tastes wine every day as part of her job. Her HDL was 110, but her other labs were normal. However, a CDT test was positive. And let's say, normally we might add something for the positive CDT, but we know that she drinks as part of her job, so we might issue a policy. But let's say we had a PEth test and the level was 2,549. That's way up there. So this person is being exposed to huge amounts of alcohol. Usually when you're a winemaker, you taste and you spit, so you don't actually ingest all that alcohol, but maybe she drinks all those tastings that she's doing. And this is an excessive amount of PEth and indicates she's exposed to large, very large amounts of alcohol, so she's at risk. So case number 4, 48-year-old male's applying for a large amount, 30 million. He had a DUI in 2016. He says he currently has a few drinks, or a drink a few days a month. He uses marijuana regularly to relax. His labs are okay. No CDT was ordered, no major medical problems. So are we okay to issue? So these are these kind of iffy cases. Like, we know he had a DUI, 9 years ago. He currently says he drinks a few days a month. What does that mean? It's a little squishy here on what his alcohol intake is. If we had a PEth test, that would really help us delineate where is this guy now, and give us a better reference range for what his alcohol intake is right now. So that's another instance where a PEth test would really be advantageous. In our last case, 48-year-old male applying for $5 million who works as an event coordinator. His APS mentions he had alcohol overuse in the past and no further details. He says he currently drinks alcohol occasionally. All the labs are within normal limits and no CDT. And again, we have no idea where this guy is now in terms of his alcohol intake. You know, it looks like maybe it's okay, but if we had a PEth test and it was in the thousands, you know, maybe he drinks a lot of alcohol as part of his event coordinating business that he participates in. So again, a PEth test would really be helpful here to give us an idea where this guy is now. And I want to add, for those who are really adventurous and want to understand the details behind the curtain, you know, we talked about these two PEth levels with these funny numbers after them, and that both, if the person is abstinent, should be less than 20. So if you're interested in finding out what those funny numbers mean, stick with me here and we'll go through some slides to help us get the secret details on what those numbers mean. So, you know, we talked in the prior videos about phosphatidylcholine in the membrane of the red blood cell. And when you drink ethanol, the ethanol kicks the choline off and adds itself to the phosphatidyl part. So we get phosphatidylethanol, or PEth. Now, if you'll notice in the green circles, that's the ethanol that attaches to the phosphatidyl part of the molecule. And in the first one, phosphatidylethanol, where it says 16:0/18:1, what does that mean? So I'm going to give you the secret details. So stick with me. So see that green triangle? There's a double line inside that green triangle. What that means is there's a double bond between two carbon atoms. So all those wiggly lines there are attached carbon atoms. And in the triangle is a double line, which means there's a double bond. That's what that 18:1 means. The one after the 18, that is that one double bond. So the one triangle. So that's what that one means. So the top wavy line is the 16, and there's no double bond, so it's 16:0. The bottom line is 18 carbon atoms, so 18 of these wavy lines. And then the one extra line is a double bond, and that's what that one is after the 18:. So it's 18:1 because there's one double bond. So that's the PEth that we normally use as our indicator. The second PEth that we talked about, it's basically the same except there's two triangles because there's two double bonds that I've highlighted with the triangles. So that's why it's 16:0 because there's no double bonds in the top wavy line. But it's 18:2 because there's two double bonds in the bottom wavy line. So those are the two PEths that are reported on blood tests. And it's kind of like this woman, if she's hanging on by both arms, that's a double bond. And if she's hanging on by one arm, that's a single bond. So most of the time these are single bonds, but we have two double bonds in the two triangles and one double bond in the one triangle. So I hope that gives you the secret of what's actually going on. Now, if we look back to the top, the phosphatidylcholine that's in the membrane of the red blood cell has an 18:2, and that's because there are two double bonds in that molecule in the long wavy line here. So just to kind of beat a dead horse to death, we're going to draw a fatty acid chain. So stick with me here and we'll draw those wavy lines ourselves to get a better feel for what's going on. So step one, you draw a W, right? Plain old W, and in each end of these lines, consider that there's a carbon atom, so a C. So carbon, 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 carbon. So there's 5 carbon atoms in step 2, right? So now we're going to draw 9 carbon atoms. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is a wavy line or a fatty acid chain with 9 carbon atoms. Everybody with me? So when we drew that one with 5 carbon atoms, those are all single bonds, kind of like one James Bond. And see, he's even got a chemical molecule behind him. I mean, how lucky was I to find that? Anyway, that's a single bond, right? So we have 5 carbon atoms. So we're going to call that 5:0 because they're all single bonds. The 0 means no double bonds. The second one, we have 9 carbon atoms, no double bonds. The third one, we have 16 carbon atoms in the fatty acid chain. So 16:0 because there's no double bonds. The fourth one, we have 18 carbon atoms, so it's 18:0 because there's no double bonds. But here at the bottom, we have 2 James Bonds because we got a double bond. And that's that red line right there. So that's why this one would be 18 carbon atoms, 18:1 double bond. So I hope that makes some sense. Now, PEth, we talked about reporting the 2 main types of PEth. The first one has the 18:1, which is 1 double bond, and the second one is 18:2 with 2 double bonds. And those make up most of what's reported as PEth. So we get those 2 numbers reported, and if they're less than 20, the person's not drinking. And PEth is in different forms like this, and these different forms are called homologs. So it's a mixture of different forms, kind of like if you had a bunch of logs, but they're not all exactly the same, but they're kind of similar. So that's kind of like a homolog. So in this case, we're going to focus on just the 2 that are reported. So 2 out of, actually there's 48 different homologs, but these are the 2 main ones that we see reported. And just like we saw before, the first one has 1 double bond reported in the blue triangle, so that's why it's 18:1. And the second one has 2 double bonds, so that's why it's 18:2. So they're reported as 16:0,18:1 and 16:0,18:2. So those are the 2 main PEths that are reported, and especially we use the first one if the second one is used only as an indicator that PEth is present. Now, maybe you've seen this commercial on TV talking about omega-3 fatty acids from the green-tipped mussel in New Zealand, and you can get this drug called Omega XL, which will eradicate your pain in your joints and make you feel great. I don't know why, but the channel that I watch for one of the programs I like has this commercial on a lot. Well, omega-3 fatty acids are available in all kinds of things. You don't have to go to New Zealand to get green-tipped mussels, but there's lots of foods that have omega-3 fatty acids. So what does omega-3 fatty acids mean? And omega is, the Greek symbol, and the lowercase omega, it looks like a little W. And what omega-3 fatty acids mean, and let's look at these long fatty acid chains, because we were just talking about fatty acid chains, right? So these are 3 omega-3 fatty acids. And if you'll notice, way over to the left, it says C18:3. Okay? That's because in this chain of 18 carbon atoms, there's 3 double bonds. Okay? Now, the reason it's called omega-3, not because there's 3 double bonds, because the first double bond is at the 3rd carbon atom. So if we went 1, 2, 3, the 3rd to the 4th carbon atom has a double bond. That's why we call it omega-3. And that holds true for all 3 of these omega-3 fatty acids. Look at this one. Second one is carbon 20:5. That's because there's 5 double bonds in this 20 carbon atom fatty chain. And the first double bond is called omega-3 because it's at the 3rd to the 4th carbon atom. And the same for the 3rd omega-3 fatty acid. That's 22 colon 6, that means there's 6 double bonds. And also at the third carbon atom, it's omega-3 because that's where the first double bond is. So you can buy omega-3 fatty acids in the grocery store, your pharmacy. You don't have to buy omega-3 fatty acids from green tip mussels in New Zealand. They're available from many foods and available much cheaper in the grocery store. So that completes our story on PEth, and I hope it's useful to you. And join me as we try to get this test incorporated into our testing so that we can better assess alcohol risk in the future.